Welcome to the last episode of Dynamite Delight for 2019. Now, this won't be a regular review. I can't do a long review because I'm still recovering from my dental surgery. So I'm not going to do a heavy review on everything that happened in this show. But I am going to give my thoughts on this show and from October until now, I'll give my final thoughts on how far have they come. For the show itself, seeing that the opening was with Paige and Omega versus the Lucha Brothers was actually pretty good. And then you wonder what Pac is going to do when it came to Kenny Omega's friend. Since now Pac has said simply, I am sick of this. Either give me what I want, I'm going to start hurting people. Well, for me personally, I wish this happened earlier than it happens now. Because it made more better sense. And it should be directed towards Hangman Page instead of Kenny Omega. I'm being honest here. This should be about Hangman Page and pissing the hell out of Pac, not Kenny Omega. But the match was good. The beatdown a little bit was good at the end. And now you wonder what's going to happen with Pac and Kenny's friend. For the women, they had 2 matches. And when it came to Miranda, who used to be on Reality of Wrestling, I recognize her. She's in my face. Oh, it's good to see her. But seeing her destroyed by Kong and having her hair cut, look, I don't know what's going on with this story. I understand they're trying to build something with Brandy and having her own faction. Honestly speaking, I think the best thing would be is to keep the faction, but I think Cody should be injected into it. As much as you probably don't want to see Cody, her husband, injected, and he's questioning, what are you doing? I really think it would be wise for him to say something eventually, not being on AEW Dark. And being the Elite. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's wise to be putting it on 2 different YouTube channels instead of putting it on the main show. When it came to, how can I say this? I did enjoy the tag team wrestling throughout the night. When Cody and Darby Allin were dealing with the Butcher and the Blade, when Bunny, I did enjoy it. But I got to admit, this was a little bit too much tag team wrestling. I'm sorry, guys. Look, I like tag team wrestling. I do. But there's supposed to be a balance of how much wrestling you give, covering with tag team wrestling, singles wrestling, something that's like a gimmick, something that really gives you something to make you interested in certain people. And I just do not believe they did it right. They could have spent the amount of time with a tag team wrestling match. They could have broke that up and put maybe short matches or vignettes of people that are on AEW Dark that you don't know about because you don't watch it, or on Being the Elite. Something that could be building more people. Too much. Too much. Now, the reason that this is a little bit late, because I usually do this review immediately after the show is over. I thought I should watch on another website the beginning and the middle, because admittedly I did miss some of it. Because of this, the medication could put me to sleep, which it did. So I went and looked back, and that's how I saw what happened with Kenny Omega and the Lucha Brothers along with Hangman Page, and what happened with Cody and Darby Allin. And the one thing that became very apparent is seeing that they really need to budget their time with their ads. Because if you go on one of the websites, they've already been pre-recorded somewhere else. You see there was dead air in one area for at least a good 2 or 3 minutes. That could have been set up for a vignette. Or when it came like to Chris Jericho, which was very cool. Chris Jericho messing with the fans because their people are still upset about that they keep going to commercial when there's really special moments and you can't see what's going on completely and you can't hear what's going on completely. And he went and got cue cards with Sammy Guevara and was messing with the crowd saying, well, if you guys are getting upset about not hearing what's going on, here we go. And I found that very funny. But then it's showing a problem that they need to work out in the beginning from January onward. This is the honeymoon. This is the last day of the honeymoon. Honestly. This is the last day of the honeymoon for AEW. This is where they're just beginning to understand what they're dealing with. When it comes to January, they better get the numbers and they better cross their I's and do their T's, because people are going to get really pissed off going forward if this situation continues to happen, where you can even hear when it comes to even JR tries his best to understand what the situation is, but a lot of times they're not giving him cues when they go to commercial, because they'll tell him they're going to commercial and they're not going to commercial yet, and he has to wait with dead air along with Excalibur and Tony Schiavone. When January rolls around, they better get this straightened out. This is getting monotonous now, and that's understandable. They are still new. But this is the honeymoon season. This is it. Beginning of 2020, they better get this sorted out within about a month, because it will become a major issue for people. Now, I think they should have switched the matches when it came for the tag team match for the titles with SCU and when it came to the Young Bucks, compared to what happened to... Look, I enjoyed the interview when it came to Jungle Boy, and it kind of upsets me to see that Jungle Boy got an interview with Jim Ross, and instead of that 10-minute match happening at the end of the show, making it important about Jungle Boy dealing with Chris Jericho and closing it with your champion, you clearly decided to make this so heavily about tag team wrestling. You forgo that, and I believe that was the wrong thing to do. Now, I'll talk about the tag team match itself. Was the Young Bucks dealing with SCU good? Yes. They did do a video package of Young Bucks, which was fine. And the match was great. I didn't hate it. But it was in the wrong slot. If you had to do this, you could have done this in the beginning of 2020 to have this match. That would have been good to kick off the show in 2020. And I would have liked to see Jungle Boy dealing with Chris here. This would have made more sense. But no, they did this. And I truly believe they made a big mistake. In the end, Young Bucks didn't win, which I wasn't surprised. They're going to be starting something in 2020. There's just no way they're not going to do it. And the show, for me, the ending of the show should have been... Was the match between Chris and Jungle Boy good? Yes. I did enjoy it. Seeing that Hager started fighting with Luchasaurus and knocked out Marco Stunts, knocked his ass out, was good. Then they went to the end, up to the limit, and pretty much when it came to Jungle Boy, he didn't job. He just ran out the time, which is a great thing. But then, honestly, I just don't believe that this should have been in the middle of the first hour. The middle of the show, the first hour. It was wrong. So was this a good show? Yeah. The matches were good. I know I could have said something about Britt Baker and the match of this other woman. I don't recognize her. But I'm not going there because, as I've said before, women's wrestling is extremely weak because they keep putting everything on AEW Dark and you barely know anyone here. Yes, they're sponsoring Brandy with her Nightmare Collective, but that's not the name. But I'm just saying, it just feels empty. So what does this come down to at the end of the year for AEW? This was a honeymoon season. They made a lot of mistakes in some ways, but they actually have done decently well. As I'm not trying to compare AEW to WWE or NXT WWE. There's no point in it. They're still too young. And it's easy to bash this thing because that's what a lot of people want to do. With all the errors and problems they have. But you're dealing with people that normally do not do jobs. Look, Billy Gunn isn't normally in production. Not to an extent that he's in. Cody's never run something like this. Neither of the Young Bucks, neither Kenny Omega. This is all a startup. So I don't expect a lot from him in the first 2 months. This is still, like I said, the honeymoon season. So I will give it for what it is. It's new. They're working out the kinks. And the show wasn't always really bad. Generally speaking, the show was okay with the problems with the advertisement and the commercials. And when it comes to the promos and vignettes, they just don't have that sorted out yet. Hopefully they will next year. And I will still give them understanding. But I'm going to be honest here, guys. As much as I am understanding, as much as I'm understanding, they need to legitimately straighten the mess out within the next, I'll say about 2 months. Within 2 months, maybe February should be the limit. Because if they don't have some certain things really straightened out by then, are they any better than WWE? As much as they got more tag team wrestling, you're getting more wrestling than you're getting story, than you're getting something that's tangible. Because if you keep putting it on dark and being the elite, you gain nothing. That's just like what WWE does when it comes to social media. So are they being any different? They need to sort that out by next year, maybe February. Because if they have not, and going beyond February, that's still exactly the same, throwing everything on AEW Dark, throwing everything on Being the Elite, and basically not saying it, but go to the internet. If you want to know anything, they're not going to be any better than the WWE, and they won't last that long. They won't. But this is just my point of view. Have a good day. Have a good night. And I'm sorry that I didn't do my Impact Wrestling review. As you know, my face is still messed up. I don't know if they're going to do an episode next week. If they do, I'll see if my mouth isn't hurting so much that I won't that I won't skip it. But if there is nothing, I might do something with an NWA Power. Peace.